Just under 2 weeks ago, in the early hours of the morning, a swarm of Ukrainian drones crossed hundreds of kilometers of Russian airspace and struck an oil refinery on the edge of Moscow. The facility supplies more than a third of the fuel for the capital's region. It burned for hours, and the smoke was visible across the city. On the same days, in the opposite direction, Russian missiles and drones fell on Kyiv, as they have on average more than 30 times a month for over a year. This is the war as it stands in the summer of 2026, not the campaign Russia launched in February 2022, not the dramatic Ukrainian counteroffensives of that first year, something slower and in many ways more total. To understand where this war is now and how it might actually end, you have to look closely at three things: the front line, the deadlock behind it, and the negotiating table where, for the first time, both sides are quietly discussing the terms of an enemy. The front runs for roughly 1,200 kilometers from the northeast of Ukraine down to the Black Sea. For more than a year, it has barely moved. Through 2024 and into 2025, Russia made slow, grinding advances, measured in villages and tree lines rather than cities. By the summer of 2026, even that momentum has largely stalled. Ukraine's commander-in-chief reported that his forces had recaptured more than 600 square kilometers in recent operations, blunting Russia's spring offensive before it could build into anything decisive. The heaviest fighting is concentrated around the city of Pokrovsk in the eastern Donetsk region. Russia has thrown wave after wave of infantry at it for the better part of a year. It has surrounded it on three sides. It still has not taken it. The defensive lines Ukraine has built over more than a decade in the Donbass are holding, at enormous cost to both armies. What has changed the character of this war is not strategy. It is the drone. Both sides now field hundreds of thousands of small first-person view drones, each one cheap, each one capable of finding and destroying a single vehicle or a single soldier. The result is a battlefield that has become transparent. Any movement is detected within minutes and can be struck almost immediately. Massing tanks and armor for a traditional breakthrough, the way armies have done for a century, now means presenting the enemy with easy targets. So the front has frozen into something that resembles the First World War far more than the Second. Trenches, artillery, drones overhead at all hours, advances measured in meters, paid for in lives. And increasingly, the war is being fought far behind the lines. Ukraine, unable to break through on the ground, has turned to long-range strikes deep inside Russia, targeting the oil refineries and military depots that keep the Russian war economy running. Russia, in turn, continues to strike Ukraine's cities and power grid. Each side is trying to exhaust the other's capacity to keep fighting. The human cost is now difficult to comprehend. Western estimates place Russian military dead well above 100,000, with Ukrainian losses lower but still severe, and hundreds of thousands wounded on both sides. By the war's fifth year, credible estimates of total casualties killed and wounded together run past 1 million. Millions of Ukrainians remain displaced across Europe in the largest movement of people the continent has seen since 1945. This is what is actually happening now. Not a collapse on either side, an attritional deadlock that neither army currently has the strength to break. A war does not freeze like this by accident. It freezes because both sides still believe that continuing to fight serves them better than the deal on offer. Russia's position has hardened around a single demand: the whole of the Donbass. Ukraine still holds roughly a quarter of the Donetsk region. Moscow insists it be handed over. Russia's leadership has stated, more than once, that if Ukrainian forces withdraw, the fighting will stop, and that if they do not, Russia will take the territory by force. From Moscow's perspective, time is on its side. It is larger, it is advancing, however slowly, and it calculates that Western support for Ukraine will eventually fade. Ukraine's position is equally fixed. It will not surrender land it is still defending. To do so, its government argues, would reward the invasion and simply give Russia a stronger line from which to attack again in a few years. Ukraine's leadership has said the current front line, wherever it happens to run, must be the basis for any ceasefire, and that any withdrawal from territory it still controls would have to be put to the Ukrainian people in a referendum it knows would fail. These two positions cannot both be satisfying. And so the war continues, each side waiting for the other's resolve or resources to give out first. And yet, for the first time since the early weeks of the invasion, the outline of an ending has begun to take shape. Since late 2025, the United States has led a renewed push for a settlement, with its envoys shuttling between the parties. Through the first half of 2026, Russian, Ukrainian, and American delegations met in Abu Dhabi, and then in Geneva, where the question of territory was formally placed on the table for the first time. Prisoners were exchanged. A short ceasefire on energy targets was tested. None of it ended the war, but it established something that had been missing for years: a process. What a realistic settlement looks like is now reasonably clear, even if reaching it is not. It would not be a return to Ukraine's 1991 borders, nor would it be a Russian conquest of the whole country. It would be a ceasefire roughly along the current front line, freezing the conflict where it stands, with the final status of the occupied territories left unresolved and pushed into years of future negotiation, rather than settled by either side's surrender. The decisive element is not the map, it is the guarantee. Ukraine has made clear that it will not accept any ceasefire that simply pauses the war and allows Russia to rearm and return. It is demanding binding, long-term security guarantees, backed by the West, strong enough to deter a future attack. In response, a coalition of European countries, led by Britain and France, has offered to station forces and establish military bases inside Ukraine once the fighting stops, and the United States has offered to lead the monitoring of any ceasefire and to act as a backstop. That is the knot the entire war now hangs on. Not whether the shooting can be paused, but whether Ukraine can be given a guarantee credible enough that it is willing to stop fighting, and whether Russia can be brought to accept a guarantee it regards as the very threat it went to war to prevent.